been paying on time every time, and you see that you're about to get run over by that train and you're trying to avoid it, and you call up and look for help, they're going to tell you, I'm sorry, you're current. You don't have a problem. You don't have a problem yet. You're going to have one in a couple months, but you don't have one yet. So just sit back and wait. What happens when you go into default? That's when the bank starts getting their attorneys on you too. So you have to put yourself in default to even qualify for the loan modification. You have to put yourself in harm's way to even qualify for the loan modification. Have to occupy the property as your primary residence. The biggest problem with HAMP, no principal reduction of your balance is possible. In the state of Florida, with this many homes flipped upside down, with no principal reduction of balance possible, it really doesn't make it a good deal for us on most of the cases that I see. It was expected to help about 3 to 4 million people. So far, they've got about 300 to 400,000. That's nationwide. Drop in the bucket. HAFA program, Home Affordable Foreclosure Alternative. For people who have been in HAMP and couldn't keep up with the terms of the payments or whatever it was, HAFA is the next option. HAFA is not a program designed to help you save your home. HAFA is an exit strategy. HAFA is when it's just not going to work and you got to get out. There are some redeeming qualities to HAFA. No deficiency judgment will be levied against you. The lender who is involved in it with you guarantees that no deficiency judgment will follow you. They can pay you up to $3,000 moving expenses, but again, you have to be willing to walk away from the home. Loan modifications. What is a loan modification? It's when the lender reduces interest rate or changes the terms of the loan so they are more favorable to the homeowner. Most people, when I say the word loan modification, when they hear it, they immediately think they're going to be able to get something they can afford. That's not the definition of a loan modification. A loan modification is I'm going to take the interest rate that you got gorged on at 10% and I'm going to drop it to 6%, even though the prevailing rate today is 4%. A modification is I'm going to take your $2,000 a month payment and drop it to $1,900 a month. Again, all stuff that I guess is good, but it really doesn't help most of the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. This should say lenders are unresponsive to homeowners seeking loan modifications. And when I say lenders, everybody understands your loan, the person you send your money to, the person you got your loan from, they don't own your loan anymore, and they haven't owned your loan for some time. They sold your loan a long time ago. They retained the servicing rights to your loan. They sold it as stock. They securitized it. Jim touched on it earlier. They made them bundles of stock, a bunch of mortgages, and they sold them to hedge funds and everybody. And they retained the servicing rights. So now you're calling these people who are the servicer of your loan, who don't even own your loan, and you're asking them for a loan modification. People tell me, why wouldn't they give me a loan modification? Because if not, they don't get anything from me. I say, are you kidding me? They don't own your loan. They haven't owned your loan for some time. In fact, as the servicer of the loan, they will make more money off of you if they foreclose upon you than if they service your loan for 30 years. The agreement they have states their fees will spike 3 to 4 times if they foreclose upon you. So you're calling somebody that has no skin in the game and saying, work with me on this. And that's why I hear stories of, for the last 6 months, I've been on the phone with Bank of America. I called one day and I got somebody new, and it's like I had never called there before. And they told me that page 17 of the fax that I sent didn't really come through, and I didn't initial line 4 right, and my paperwork now is out of date, and I'm going to have to send everything in all new again. And I tell people, do you really think it should take them more than 2 weeks to make a decision on whether or not to give you a loan modification? Are you kidding me? At the most, they know who you are. They have your financials. They've known who you are for years. You've been doing business with them for years. And yet you're getting led around in circles. Why? Because they would rather foreclose upon you. They got no interest in giving you a loan modification. They would much rather foreclose upon you. Anytime someone tells me I've been on the phone for months, it's like, oh my gosh, do you really think it takes them that long to make these decisions? Think about it. The Sarasota Herald Tribune had this quote. I thought it was great. Banks are totally, and here's the key word, intentionally dysfunctional. The reason they get away with this is they're dealing with consumers who are not educated in the way things are supposed to work. They just keep browbeating people until they give up and go away. Complaints against Bank of America accuse the company of failing to provide answers, repeatedly losing documents, lying about sending letters that were never sent, and of proceeding with foreclosures while customers are trying to get loan modifications. Jim touched on it before, dual tracking. Oh yes, you want to get a loan modification? That's great. I see people every day showing up in court, and all of a sudden they're standing there and they're pale-faced, and they're looking at the judge and they're saying, Judge, I don't even know why we're here today. Just 3 days ago, I was on the phone with Jim from Wells Fargo, and we're talking about a loan modification. And the judge says, that's great, but today we're here to foreclose upon you. I'll set the sale date at 90 days out, and I hope you get it worked out within 3 months. If not, you're out. According to the U.S. government, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency reported that more than half of all loan mods created have already redefaulted 9 months after the modification. Why is that? They're making people become delinquent and in default on their loans. In the meantime, they're talking to them about loan modifications. So now you're getting letters from attorneys and from the court that is saying, you got this date coming up, you got to show up in front of the judge. So most of these people, what did they do? They accepted bad deals. They accepted bad loan modifications. They were scared. They were under pressure, under stress from attorneys' offices. And what did I do? Anything to make it stop. So they sign something. They get into a bad loan mod. 9 months later, they're right back in that sinking ship. And now they don't qualify for another loan modification because you've already had one. And it's time to get you out of the house again. As foreclosures have mounted in recent years, regulators have been trying to get lenders to reduce the principal on home loans for delinquent borrowers. Banks have preferred to cut interest rates or extend payment periods when they modify. In our state, last year, only 4% of borrowers who got loan modifications in the fourth quarter received a principal reduction of balance. 4%. The other 96 out of 100, they were stuck with what they had. I want everybody to be very careful of the scams and schemes that go around. When people are on hard times financially, they're going to come out of the woodwork, especially with the internet these days. Rescue companies have become widespread with promises to help people avoid losing their homes. Many of these companies use questionable and illegal tactics. There is nobody on the internet that can get you a loan modification. Let me just put it as clearly as I can. There is no one on the internet that can get you a loan modification. They're selling you a bill of goods. It is illegal in the state of Florida for anyone to charge an upfront fee to get you a loan modification. It is illegal in the state of Florida for anyone to charge you an upfront fee to get you a loan modification. I hear terrible stories from people who take their last $3,000 and see a company from Ohio and send their money off, and they talk to them for 3 months and then they never hear from them again, and they hear they were denied their modification attempt. What are you going to do? Get in the car and go up to Ohio? Go get your money back? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Predatory lending. What is predatory lending? It's when a lender or mortgage broker engages in deception or fraud or manipulates the borrower through aggressive sales tactics or takes unfair advantage of a borrower's lack of understanding of loan terms. I'm sure everybody here read all 47 pages of their loan agreement and knew what every word meant and know where every dollar went. Because if you didn't do it, I'm sure you hired an attorney to sit down with you and go over it, right? You know what you did is you relied on the bank because you trusted them, and you relied on the mortgage broker because you trusted him or her too, because they're going to do right by me. They're going to give me the best deal for me. I'm sure they're not going to be interested in making their own money or do things that might make them more money or put me in situations where I didn't really understand the ramifications, put me in positions with loans that are risky overinflate the value of my house. Predatory lending has been rampant over the last decade. Wall Street Journal reported in far back as 2006, 61% of all borrowers who received subprime loans had credit scores high enough to qualify for prime conventional loans. What is a subprime? That's the ones that got us in all the trouble we're in right now. That's the one that basically caused the collapse of the free market economy. Subprime loans were the riskiest, most expensive loans sold. They were sold, more subprime loans were sold by Countrywide than anybody else. Countrywide's founder, Mr. Mazzillo, was fined $86 million earlier last year. That's $1 million last year for his role in what I consider to be one of the largest frauds ever committed in the United States. Subprime loans were the ones where your mortgage broker made a lot of money, where the bank made a lot of money. Heavy fees attached to them. Used to be in the day, if you could fog a mirror, I could get you a loan. Bank, turn a blind eye, didn't have to see a tax statement, didn't have to see a bank statement, didn't have to see anything. We'll just take the word of that mortgage broker, because why would he lie? Why would he lie? Well, probably he'd lie because he makes more money if he lies. And he makes more money if he gets you in a more expensive loan. And he makes more money if he puts you in a higher loan. So you know what? I know your house had appraised for about $300,000, but I know old Jim. He's got his appraisal company. He works for the bank all the time. We're going to have him come around. He's going to take a look at it. I bet he could add at least $30,000 onto that. We could get it up to $330,000, that loan, and we write that off. You could walk away with $30,000 of cash in your pocket after we close. Doesn't that sound great? It's a win-win for everybody. And you know why? Because don't worry, if you can't afford it, you just turn around and sell your home next year, because property values will never go down. It's an investment in the future. It's an investment in your home. Don't ever worry about it. Well, and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out. And they've made their money, and you're stuck with an investment that's been devalued 50, 75, 100%. You tell me. Fighting foreclosures is the only way to make sure that consumers, especially those who were tricked into loans they couldn't afford, are treated fairly, because the banks aren't going to do it on their own. This is from the American Association for Justice, December 2008. They've already shown us they're not going to do it on their own. They didn't look out for you when you went to get that loan. They looked out for themselves. Questionable fees. The New York Times reported that an analysis of foreclosures found that questionable fees had been added to half of all of the loans examined. This isn't one rogue bank, one rogue state. This is industry practice. This is how they chose to conduct business. Half of all of the loans examined showed questionable fees. That's industry standard. If we can, hey, a sucker's born every day, and if we can write them up for it, then let's take their money. Do you know if your loan has lender violations? 8 out of 10 home loans that we look at show lender violations. Why is that important? Why could that be beneficial to you? Well, they could give you some leverage. It could give you some leverage when you're looking to get a loan modification. If you threaten the bank with your own lawsuit, a lot of times they say, you know what, we don't really want that. Maybe we'll try to work with you a little harder than we have in the past. They could enable you to sue your lender for damages. Now, there's some very extreme ones that could allow loans to be rescinded, but I don't want anybody to count on that. There are some people getting some free homes out there, but there's not many of them. What are regulations that protect homeowners? Most people have no idea what regulations protect them. Truth in Lending Act, or TILA. Home Ownership and Equity Protection Act, or HEPA. Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, or RESPA. And the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Mortgage securitization. We touched on it briefly. What is that? Well, hey, 30 years ago, if you got a mortgage from the bank, they were going to keep it on their books. You'd show up to that bank, you paid it off, everybody knew everybody. Well, that hasn't been the case for quite some time. Most, if not all, of your loans were sold on Wall Street. That process is called securitization. In many cases, your loans were sold hundreds of times. Why is that important? When you sell real estate, when you transfer interest in real estate, there are certain procedures that have to be followed. You can't just do away with it. You can't just say that Dave and Jim now have an agreement that says Jim owns the property. It has to be properly noted, duly recorded. The University of Iowa found that 40% of banks foreclosing on borrowers could not prove that they actually owned the loan. I'd say 8 out of 10 complaints that reaches my office say something like this. Well, We own the note. And we just don't have the note right yet. And so you give us some time, and we're going to go find that note. But in the meantime, we need to proceed with this lawsuit. And under Florida law, they are allowed to do just that. Lack of proof can prevent a foreclosure. Courts all over our state have dismissed cases because lenders have not been able to prove ownership of the notes. American Association for Justice, as far back as December 2008, the lawsuit is part of a new approach to foreclosure defense. Because of lenders' bundling and reselling of mortgages, notes are often lost, misplaced, or corrupted. As a result, many lenders can't prove that they are owed payments and entitled to foreclose. Climate here in our state, it's been terrible. For the last 2 or 3 years, the banks and their attorneys were basically operating on the fringes of not even the law. They were doing whatever they needed to do to just make the foreclosure happen. These mills, as they call them, these foreclosure mills had popped up, and they had made agreements with the bank where they basically told them, we know we can get a foreclosure done in 8 months, and it's going to cost you $1,500. And they took them by the thousands. Out of that sprung things called robo-signers. The banks would be so backed up with the foreclosure paperwork that they had to follow that instead of following the law, what they would do is get people in a room and they'd say, hey, Jim, I know you're just a clerk here over at JP Morgan Chase, but today we're going to make you assistant vice president. And we're going to put you in the room here with Sally, and we're going to make her an attorney in fact. And I want you guys to sign these 300 foreclosure orders by lunchtime and get them down to the notary department, and let's get them shipped off. Of course, by signing that, you say that you've read everything in the file and you know everything to be true.